I'm going to share with you a little bit of my process for designing with the solid half double crochet square. I'm making notes partly to myself and partly for my viewers that show me what I've done with the various options as I swatch these various squares. This first picture shows the very first round of a half double crochet square in progress. The corners consist of half double crochet, chain 2, half double crochet. And this picture shows options for where you can insert your hook for round 2. The first option shows a little tiny hole that's to the left of the post of a stitch. The second arrow is pointing to another option, which is actually between the posts of 2 stitches. And the third arrow is pointing to a small hole where you can insert your hook that would be to the right of the post of the stitch. These pictures demonstrate what happens if you do each of the 3 previous methods listed on the previous slide. If you insert your hook in the first little hole that's to the right of the first stitch, the sides come out wavy. It looks rather wonky. The square in the middle shows what happens if you insert your hook in the tiny spot to the left of the last stitch of each side just before you start the corner. This looks a little less wonky, but it still looks wavy. The square on the right, on the other hand, which is my favorite, shows what happens if you simply skip the little hole at the very beginning that's to the right of the first stitch, and also skip the last little hole that's after the post of the last stitch. And basically what you're doing is putting a half double crochet in between the posts of the previous stitches. You'll see that round 2, the side contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches, and then round 3, not counting the corners, but the number of stitches put into the side, 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically we have done a half double crochet in between the stitches of the previous round. This slide shows what happens if you use 3 different options for making the corners. The first option on the left has 4 half double crochet stitches in 1 stitch to make each corner, and you'll see that the edge of the square is rounded. It's also very dense. The whole fabric of the entire square is very dense without any large holes. The second square is a little more squared off on the edges, and we've added 1 chain between the first 2 and the 3rd and 4th half double crochet stitches in that square. The last square, interestingly, came out a little larger, even though I used the same hook and the same yarn, because I used 2 chains in between the 2 sets of 2 half double crochets in the corner. The square came out larger, and of course the holes are larger too. So here's a list of my conclusions about designing the sides of a half double crochet square. Number 1, I made a note to myself: do not work into the tiny loop that's to the right of the first stitch after the corner of any side. Number 2, do not work into the tiny loop that's to the left of the last stitch of any side. And number 3, the best option, in my opinion, is to skip the first stitch of every side, essentially working between the stitches. And here are notes to myself about what to do with the corners. And as I said before, all 3 of these options are fine, depending on the end result. Number 1, the 4 half double crochet in one stitch yields a curved corner, which may be what you want. It also yields a very dense fabric with very small holes. Number 2, 2 half double crochet, chain 1, 2 half double crochet in the corner. Makes the corner a little more squared. The holes are a little bit bigger. The square itself is about the same size as the square in number 1. Number 3, in the corner, working 2 half double crochet, chain 2, 2 half double crochet, also makes a nice squared corner, and also the square ends up being larger. The holes themselves in the corners are also larger, which does provide an interesting option, enabling you to do surface crochet easily into those holes. And as a note, all squares were made with worsted weight yarn, number 4 weight, Red Heart Super Saver yarn, and I used an I9 or 5.5 millimeter hook on all the samples that you see in this video. This is a picture of my table that's to the left of where I sit when I design crochet patterns, and you can see that I'm messy. When I'm in a frenzy, I'm messy. This is a list of places that you can go on the internet to visit my various pattern stores and social media sites. I have a Ravelry store, a Ravelry group, an Etsy store, I have a blog, a Facebook page, an Instagram account, and a Pinterest account. And I would invite you to please visit those sites, share your comments and suggestions, and subscribe to me, please, here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fun time crocheting.